And now joining me in the studio to discuss the implication of this development on the economy and other issues is Chris Kaka. Chris Kaka is an economist of repute. You're welcome to Business Express.
My pleasure being here.
Thank you. Firstly, let's talk about the impact of this price reduction on the economy. How do you think this will affect the various sectors of industries, considering that diesel as a commodity, as a source of power, is widely used for transportation, power generation, particularly for factories?
Okay, thank you very much. First is to say that the reduction in price by the Dangote refinery of the price of diesel, the AGO, it's a welcome development because, like you rightly pointed out, the current inflationary trend, which is becoming intractable, one critical driver of it is the cost of energy. And if you are able to address that, you would have substantially dealt with, not in totality, dealt with a major component driving the current inflation which we have in the country, which is rising very high. And so one must say it's a very welcome development. These are part of the benefit of the deregulation of that particular sector. Because I'm imagining if you don't have the Dangote on ground in this side of it and all the refineries in Nigeria are not functioning, I can tell you that the pressure we currently see on the forex will be higher, and the devaluation of our currency would have actually been more higher than what we're actually seeing. So it's a very good development. In terms of impact, like you rightly pointed out, I mean, energy is a critical component of the cost of production. And so now that the price is actually down from 1,200 to 1,000, allow me to say that even before now, when Dangote came on stream, the market price was about 1,600, but he was willing to sell at 1,002, reducing the price by about 25%. And to have further gone down now by about 16.66% from 1,200 to 1,000, one must say is a very good welcome development because it will help the industries to produce at a competitive price, and they will be able to sell at a price that can generate enough profit for them and compete in the international market for those of them who actually export their product at the moment. So in general, I think it's a very good development, a welcome one, and it will help. These are part of the private sector contribution to helping the government, the central bank address issues of rising inflation in Nigeria, which is a good development.
Okay, yes, I have mentioned inflation, which is one of the anticipated benefits of this reduction is actually to see how this inflation issue is going to kind of reduce. We have witnessed an increase, talking about month on month, year on year. But all of these factors have been taken care of, talking about energy, talking about the Naira gaining against the dollar, and some other steps that have been taken to ensure the economy is put on a path of growth. Should we now expect this? But at this point, I've been told that we have breaking news. We have a correspondent standing by in some location. I think the residents of the former governor of Kogi State, talking about Yahaya Bello, the men of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, are standing by his house, I think, for some sort of arrest. Olajide, are you with us at this time? Okay, you can see the crowd there. Okay, now at this point, these are live pictures where men of the EFCC are the residents of the immediate past governor of the state, talking about Yahaya Bello. This has been had issues. I think he's been wanted to answer some questions from his administration, and now we can see from these pictures the men of the EFCC are at his residence, and we have our correspondent standing by who look forward to see how we'll get to join him afterwards to get to know the real situation at that particular place. But this goes to show how effective, or to a large extent how proactive law enforcement is. But at this particular point in time, we don't exactly know what is happening there, but they're actually at the residence. That has been confirmed at this particular point in time. Okay, we'll get to know what is happening exactly at that location in the course of the program. Now to you, Chris Kaka. Now, Chris Kaka, one of the anticipated benefits of this reduction is the potential reduction in the high inflation rate in the country. Do we expect a significant reduction following the impact of this steps that have been taken by government to ensure that inflation slows down?
One can categorically say that right now. That would be a subject of an empirical analysis you may have done. We agree that energy price is one of the drivers of the current inflation which we have on ground. But you must also realize that it goes beyond that. Food consumer price index, which is also a major factor, the rising cost of insecurity in the country, is one of the issues that are also driving it. That Dangote has done this does not mean you are putting a hold on every other things. I can tell you that people hardly go to farms, and for those who go, there is no guarantee that what is growing is going to get to maturity and not be eaten up. And in the event it does, some of them are not even too sure if they are able to harvest what they have. Until we deal with that particular issue of insecurity, I can tell we can't say a significant drop in inflation will arise from Dangote's action, but then we know that something will definitely happen. But it cannot be significant because Dangote's, the cost of energy alone is not the major drivers of the headline inflation as we have it in the country at the moment.
Okay, yes, you agree with me that the headline inflation we're talking about is largely driven by food as well as energy prices. That's now, the angle of the energy is being sorted out with, yes, with the Dangote refinery coming on board, the cost of diesel has been slashed. Then we're looking forward to petrol being reeled out from that particular refinery by next month, a few weeks from now. That in addition to the Port Harcourt refinery that we are looking forward to saying also start production as well as dispensing this product. Yes, you've mentioned the issue of security for farmers to get to go back to farm. Where are we talking about production? Would this aid increase production? We need to produce, yes, not just for self-sufficiency, but also for exports. Would that go a long way in slowing inflation?
If I understand your question, slowing inflation as it vis-a-vis the step that Dangote refineries has actually taken up production. Obviously, I think one must give it to it. You also said in your prologue that, Dangote refinery is the largest we have in Africa at the moment. I think it's also pairing up with that they have in Europe. And if it continues the way it is at the moment, whether the government refineries come up on stream or not, I can tell you that there will be significant progress to be made in actually addressing some of the challenges facing the country. One, issues of inflation will actually would go down. And the other one will be the stabilization of our exchange rate, because what is happening at the moment is that even if you are a major importer of diesel, the AGO, into this country, what Dangote has done is that it has made it almost impossible for you to make a profit out of it by importing it. And importing means you have to place your hands, make a request on the reserve which we have. And these are part of the pressure that is being pushed on the Forex and is actually making the devaluation of the Naira go on. So what we're saying at the moment is that what Dangote has done has far-reaching impact and effect on inflation and the exchange rate devaluation which we have at the moment. And I think that will actually help to put Nigeria back on track and see how we can begin to reverse the economic growth that we are seeing at the moment, which has been negative, to a positive one.
Now, the Bretton Woods institutions, talking about the World Bank and the IMF, have invited ministers of finance, captains of industries, people in the private sector, civil society, all over to Washington to discuss the state of the economy. And particularly a few hours from now, they will be talking about not just any part of the world, but they will be talking about Africa. And part of their interest is energizing Africa. Yes, they're talking about less of fossil fuels, and let's talk about alternative sources of energy. Where are we? We have a transition plan in place. Experts have said that is about the best policy document, well thought out, well fashioned out, implementable. Where are we on it? What are your thoughts on that?
Which of the documents are we referring to?
We're talking about the National Energy Transition Plan.
Fine. I think it's a global agenda. Everybody is trying to do it with fossil fuels, and in the long run, you need to actually align with it. It's like when we say that the world is transiting away from utilization of cash, you will be left behind if you don't actually follow the trend, which is what is going on at the moment. For me, Nigeria has a plan. If you check the nationally determined commitments which we made at the last climate change, you will find that there are plans on ground almost covering the next 10, 20 years thereabout of what we need to do to move us away from fossil fuel and move us into a situation where we begin to burn less of carbon, carbon emissions in our economy, which is what the global agenda is actually moving at the moment. And I think to discuss that at that particular IMF summit is a very good one. While I have my reservations about what IMF is also representing and what it has done to so many economies like Nigeria, if you consider what they did to us during the structural adjustment program of the 1986, where there were a lot of tightenings, reform in the public service, fiscal policy reforms, all so many other things. At the end of it, we never saw the dividend of it, but Nigerians went through hell. And I think, which is the way the IMF actually works. If you look at the way they walk around, they come into your country, you invite them, they do an assessment of your country, give you advice. When that goes on, they provide you the credit you actually need. They don't give free credits. Some of them are at concession, some not at concession. But at the end of the day, they expect some certain kinds of critical reforms to be carried on, including reforms that you need to carry out in the public service, which is what we had before, the rationalization of the public service. Different reforms we have at the moment right now are also functions of what the IMF has advised us to do.
Yes, I agree. Sorry to hold your thoughts. You just mentioned what they stand for, talking about the Bretton Woods institutions. Yes, I also understand. While we talk about those bitter sides, we also had the sweet sides as benefits of SAP, which was an agenda, well, I say a program that was being implemented from the advice of the World Bank. You also agree with me that there has been some reforms at the World Bank at this particular point in time. Just a few days ago, the president of the World Bank, Ajibanga, announced a 50-year financing of a project that have global impact. And Africa, developing economies, emerging economies, as well as economies in Africa are the center point. And being at the center point, these loans are actually given at a lower interest rate, unlike what's been obtainable before now. But then, as it is, what should we expect in terms of technology transfer for us to get that technology from the global south to blend with what we have in country indigenously, more so that we're also advocating local content at this point?
And I believe what you are referring to in this context is issues talking about energy itself.
Great.
Which is one of the topic of the conversations at the moment at the summit today on the sideline. Obviously, the summit also provides an opportunity for, like you mentioned, critical stakeholders within the economy, private sector, government officials, CBN governors, and the rest of them, ministers of finance, including the civil society and academia, to all come around, exchange ideas, discuss, and then reach some consensus about it. In fact, the conversation that goes on there helps to also guide the policy direction of the IMF itself and the World Bank Group itself in what they need to do next and actually help some of these countries getting out of their challenges which they have. The issue about the energy thing is a very good one, I must tell you the truth, except, of course, like you rightly said, this facility which they will provide for you to also be able to meet up with these things come with a lot of conditionalities. And some of them are sometimes have far-reaching effects. They take
but are we able to meet some of these conditionalities?
Of course.
And are they also beneficial to us at this particular point?
Well, in all honesty, they are. People have also argued that the structural adjustment program, which many of us have criticized, had its benefit, but that the benefits were actually cornered by a couple of other individuals in government. How true that is, we do not know. But what the common man on the street knew that Nigerians went through hell in 1986 under Babangida's regime when they adopted the structural adjustment program. Remember that when IMF wants to give you a credit, concessional it may be, and beat anybody else on, is that when they give it to you, there are conditions attached to it which you must carry out. Physical reforms, tax reforms.
You also agree with me if you follow closely to their reforms. There's been so much recommendations by the G20 nations as to where and how the World Bank and the IMF should approach interventions, particularly when it has to do with emerging economies. And I think there are a lot of reforms in that light. Dr. Chris Kaka, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us at this particular point in time. This is just the second day of the meetings. I think we're going to meet again here to review some of those decisions taken at that World Global Forum as it affects Nigeria and Africa at large.
Thank you for having me.